It's 12 o'clock, so we will just start off, or should we wait for another 4 minutes?
I think
I
we
think we
can.
should just start now. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming for another monthly drop-in clinic. We're excited to have Pete and Sarah with us today, and I will be interviewing them on some questions on the topic sustainability and communication. I will also be facilitating the meeting, and after the interview questions, we will open the section for questions and answers. And Pete will be answering. Sarah will be supporting him for every question as I'm going to ask both of them. So this is like the first time we're having two people, you know, answering our interview questions. So we're expecting so much today. um at the end, Luke will round up the meeting. He's good at that, so I'll leave that. I'll leave that to Luke. So I'll start by asking them questions, and then we'll do the questions and answers. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat box, or you could raise your hands anytime you feel like you want to say something. Um, I'll start with the question. So, are we good to go, Pete? You good
Yeah,
to
let's
go,
do it.
Sarah? Let's
Mhm.
do it. Okay. The first question is, can you tell us a bit about your role at the university and your experience with sustainability communication?
Yeah, certainly. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Pete Bryant. I'm Staff Communications Manager at the university. I've done that for about a year and a half now. And before that, I was in the press office for 5 years. So obviously being at Reading, sustainability is a big thing. It's a core principle in our strategy and something we're all proud of. So in both those roles, it was very prominent that I was communicating like our achievements and kind of what we want to do to all kinds of different audiences. And the obviously that varies between sort of sharing institutional successes like recycling rates and solar panels and all that kind of thing, but also in this role particularly kind of what we want our staff to do to support that and kind of more individual actions, which has been a big thing over the last year with our Future First. Obviously, Sarah and I we tend to deal with big audiences, either the public or all staff as a sort of collective. But hopefully some of the stuff that we'll talk about today will be useful because it's just general sort of good communication practice, I suppose. It would be useful for all of you guys. I can see we've got people from all different roles. Hopefully the tips will be sort of applicable to the kinds of communication you do every day, whether that's within your teams, whether you own channels yourselves, that kind of thing. So yeah, just wanted to say up front that I want to get across today that those kind of smaller communication practices, the everyday conversations and stuff are really important and can help change culture and get messages out, and you can all play a part in that. So that's hopefully what we'll get across today.
Thank you, Pete. Sarah?
So I'm Sarah. I work in digital communications and engagement, which means I help run the central social media university central social media accounts. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, YouTube, LinkedIn. I think I've got all of them there. It's quite a lot. And whereas Pete is mainly talking directly to staff through the staff portal, with the university channels, we talk to current staff, past staff, students, current students, past students, future students, their parents, academics, both at Reading or elsewhere, business partners, and the general public. So we've got a lot of people that we're speaking to, and we're kind of trying to talk to them all in different ways. We on the channels, we aim to showcase the huge range of the interesting and amazing stuff that goes on at Reading. There's always something to talk about, sometimes too much. Our messaging around sustainability tends to sort of focus on the sort of achievements and sort of showing rather than telling people what we're doing at the university. on a kind of broader scale to show that we're doing something and we're kind of putting our money where our mouth is in terms of sustainability and climate change. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you so much. And I will say thank you for your support towards our Future First, on the case studies and the newsletters and our stability and everything. We appreciate your effort towards bridging sustainability across the university. And our second question is, how can sustainability messages be crafted that are both compelling and easy to understand?
So that's the big sort of question that me and Sarah grapple with every day, really. It's sort of how we're judged on doing our jobs. So I think we'd probably both agree that you've got to sort of start with your audience and think about what they need and what's in it for them, to be honest. Why should that audience care what we're trying to say? And when I say audience, as I say, I mean the audiences we talk to, the public and all staff, but also, the person next to you in the office. If we're trying to get people to do something, why should they listen to what we're trying to say, basically? So start from sort of that point of view. I think if you can present, particularly when it's sort of an ask, when we're sort of trying to change behaviours and stuff, if you can present the benefits of that to that person, ideally, but if not, then to the university or to the planet, perhaps. That will really sort of get more engagement and more buy-in. I think people will always sort of respond more knowing they're doing something that will benefit them in some way. So an example of that from comms, we've done the heating stuff from last year, where we were trying to sort of obviously reduce our carbon footprint by heating buildings more smartly, rather than us communicate that as a reduction in heating, something people are losing. We tried to frame that as something people were gaining, which was smarter heating of buildings, as I say, not just heating an empty room, actually prioritising when people are sat at their desks. Similarly with the portable heaters, which was sort of a related guidance. Obviously, when it's freezing, we're all tempted to sort of stick on the electric heaters in the office and stuff. We tried to make it very clear that actually there were that might disadvantage people. Like if you put on the heater, it can mess with the sensors and people might actually be sat there more cold, conversely to what they're trying to do. So trying, rather than sort of showing it as taking something away, we're showing it as something we're adding, and how that person will benefit and how the people they work with will benefit. And I think that's a good principle to take in any kind of message that we're sharing. So with that in mind, it's, I think, a core. Oh, actually, I've got a quick slide to show this next point. Trying to make messages kind of relatable and meaningful to people. So just a quick image I can show here. Can everyone see a collage of stories there? Hopefully you can. So rather than sort of chucking information at people, I think it's really important to make it meaningful to them. And so the solar panels are probably a good example where rather than saying, we've installed X number of solar panels and they produce X number of kilowatts or megawatt peaks or whatever it is, the terminology, we try and present that wherever, as much as possible, as sort of translating it into what that sort of means to people. So I think all three of these examples are kind of, that's enough energy to power a UK home for 5 days or whatever it is, power the building that you work in for 4 years, I think is that middle stat. So kind of using stats in that way to make information really relevant and to make it meaningful for the audience, I think is important. And just avoiding making that complex, which I think this does. I think scientific jargon's a bit of a no-no. Keep it simple and relatable. Yeah, that's me. I think Sarah's probably got better insight into social media though.
So yeah, with social media, we always have to make sure that we're being authentic and not in any way greenwashing or kind of presenting something that we're not actually doing well, or basically lying. So that's something we always kind of have going on when we're writing our posts. We provide data, we present facts, and we point to research. So we use a lot of the press team's news stories as our kind of jumping off point. We also have to just be careful of our wording, because sometimes when you read something, you kind of take it on board in one way, but that can actually kind of skew the actual meaning or the stuff that you're trying to represent. So that's something we're quite careful of. We also tend to kind of pick out the big kind of wow message, as Pete was sort of saying. You kind of lead with your big exciting thing that you want to talk about, and then kind of fill in the other stuff afterwards. And especially with videos, people have very short attention spans. So I think they will watch the first 3 seconds and then disappear. So you've literally got 3 seconds to kind of try and get your message across. So we try our best to kind of front load all of that stuff before we lose them. Which is slightly soul destroying, but it's fine. And also we try and use the kind of one word is better than 10 kind of thought process. So rather than just writing reams and reams of stuff, just try and put it down as quickly and easily for people to understand as possible, but without dumbing it down, because we're also talking to academics and people. So we're kind of wearing a lot of hats at the same time. So I'm just going to share in the chat a post that we did on the Christmas shutdown piece. And that kind of shows that we're doing something to our kind of wider audience as well. So yeah, that's it from me.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you for that great insight. I'll go to the third question, and it says, how can champions determine which channels are most effective for their specific audience?
This is a really interesting one. We do kind of research into where our audiences hang out the most. So kind of see social media channels as places where people live or sit. So you kind of have to work out who it is you want to talk to and why, and then find out where they tend to spend their time. So for example, we tend to post kind of community related news in Facebook, because we know that that is our kind of audience there is staff and people from the local community. So we tend to post things like about events or stuff that does affect the rest of the town in that kind of area. Whereas Twitter is where you've got a lot of academics and people who are engaged with research and studies, and also current affairs and news. So that's where we tend to put our news stories and kind of big achievements and all of those kind of things. So yeah, Pete.
Yeah, as Sarah says, really, we also try and think about where the audience is. I think that's the key point. Rather than sort of shouting it somewhere where you think is important, try and go to where your audience is. Some of you on the call might have your own channels that you either own, whether it's social media or even just a Teams channel that you can post in for your for your department or whatever. So I think it's important to think of those Teams channels, Teams chat threads, office meetings, obviously, as well, that we probably all have on sort of a regular basis. Whether you have, I don't know, a notice board in the kitchen area, that kind of thing. I think all these channels you might not sort of think of as that important, but if you think about what you interact with day to day when you're in the office, they're actually the things that we probably see the most. As I say, I wanted to make the point that I think face-to-face kind of in-person sharing of these messages to the people who sit near us in the office is really, really important. Can I just do a quick show of hands of people who are on the call? You can do the raise hand function, can't you? Would you say that you get most of your sort of information about things you need to do in face-to-face in Teams meetings, or don't raise your hand if you think you read them in the portal or whatever? Hopefully people are listening and this won't disprove my point. There we go. I'm glad to see that. That could have gone wrong. So yeah, I think we'd all agree that sort of conversations that we have day to day and the meetings that we have are really the way we hear about things that really have to be done. And us all as champions can perform that role. Basically, we can be the ones that speak up in meetings, put it in the Teams chats and share those messages. So I've talked about channels that we own, but there are obviously also channels out there that others own that we can input into. Sustainability have their Sustainability Matters newsletter that goes out. So if we're doing initiatives or we've had some success in our local areas, we have places where we can communicate that to wider groups of staff that aren't just sort of in our immediate area. Obviously, there's other channels like communities of practice. There's Teams meetings in specific areas, like for managers or for a particular school that might benefit from a particular message. There's newsletters for teaching and learning colleagues, for research colleagues, and last but not least, our main channels that I manage, the staff portal, In Brief newsletter, VC, all staff talks, all this kind of thing. There are all sorts of different ways that we can reach particular groups of people depending on the message, and I think choosing those channels wisely can be almost as important as what we say in the actual message. I also wanted to say about, we talk about channels as sort of like for sharing and for broadcasting, but there are also channels that we as champions can use to communicate back up the other way. There's the Estates Help Desk. I know the sustainability team are always open to hearing about things that we see that aren't working quite as well as they should. An example of that, correct me if I'm wrong, Luke and Caroline, but I think there was a case where a colleague was walking around the university and saw that lights were on overnight in the library or something. They reported that to the sustainability team, and they were able to then amend that sensor and get those lights to not be on when there was no one in there. I think it's easy to walk around and think, oh, well, people must know what's going on. And sometimes unless we report these things, no one actually does know. And again, I think that's a crucial role that we can play in just reporting some of this stuff that's broken or not quite working, and enact small but kind of meaningful changes that way. Yeah, that's everything.
Oh, thank you.
We have got a hand up.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's what I was about to say.
Might be someone who's very keen to say that they hear stuff face to face.
Sorry, I just never took it down after answering the other question. Sorry.
Okay. It's very key for us to understand who our target audience, and making sure that the right message is being sent out to the right people at the right time. It's interesting to understand that we can use specific social medias to, reach out to specific people. I'll just go to the next question, and that's the fourth question, and it's: what practical tips can you share with us to enhance communication efforts?
So I've tried to break this down into some do's and don'ts, which are always a bit of fun. They're in a bit of a random order, though. It's not do's then don'ts, it's a bit of a mix. But the sort of top things that came into my head were, we've talked about trying to be persuasive and the fact that people, we can't assume people care what we're sharing. I think we have to start from the position that people find some of this stuff a bit of an inconvenience, not having heating, not turning lights off when they go out of rooms and stuff. We've got to try and make it meaningful to them and persuade them that it matters and that it's worth bothering with. We've also got to think about the fact that we're competing against a lot of other information that colleagues get day to day. We obviously all drown in emails. We're constantly going back to back in meetings sometimes, then there's lunch and we're looking at social media stuff from other feeds and stuff. We've got to sort of cut through that and make people feel like what we're saying matters and is noticeable, essentially. The next do was to try and use stats and examples. I used that solar panels example. Just because things like that sometimes are the things that stick in people's minds. If it's a surprising stat, like, I think we did in an all staff talk, turning off your monitor for an hour a day can, like if 1,000 colleagues did that, it would be enough to power a UK home for 4 or 5 days or something. Dan Fernback will correct me on that, but it's something in that region, and that's huge. And I remember that months and months later, because I always try and make a point of turning off my monitor now for that hour a day or whatever, and think actually that's actually doing something. So stats are quite good. It also shows how it makes it clear how it benefits people as well sometimes, and as I say, just makes it more obvious why it's meaningful to that person. Another do, to be clear with your messages. Some of this stuff can be quite complex, particularly the research side of things, but also, as I say, some of the information about solar panel performance and all those kind of stats So think about what your audience needs and present that really clearly, and get your message up very prominent. If you're trying to get people to, for example, turn off light switches, don't start off with a minute or talking, or a couple of paragraphs talking about how energy is measured or something. Just get straight to the point, what we want people to do, and then sort of tell them why, basically. Similarly, if it is written communication you're doing, try and use short sentences, lots of line breaks, feed it to people in sort of digestible chunks, really, rather than big long passages of text. And headings are quite good as well to break up text. Sarah might mention this in a minute, but images and video, obviously people will see them probably before they see written words. That's always helpful. And as I was saying, because we shouldn't assume people are really, I think everyone has a level of interest, but we shouldn't assume people are already engaged with this and have some prior knowledge. So try and not be vague, be as clear as you can with, what it is we're saying and what we want people to do in a very sort of clear way. If it's a simple action we're asking for, make that a really simple instruction. And if you're doing that message, try and maybe walk it through in your head, thinking, if I was hearing this and I wasn't really that bothered about sustainability, for example, what point might I reach where I think, oh, this has lost me now, I can't be bothered with this, and try and anticipate that before you're giving the message. If you think, oh, when I get to this bit about the action we expect, and people might sort of turn off, try and think how you're going to counter that and how you're going to sort of keep them engaged and keep them thinking and get them to act. Be targeted is the next do, which I've also already talked about. Obviously we own the all staff channels, and sometimes that can be seen as the best thing. If we can get something on a portal, everyone sees that and everyone's got access to it. Actually, not a smaller proportion of staff see that than you would think. So actually, I think being more targeted and talking to fewer people can actually sometimes be far more powerful, whether that's, as I say, saying something in a team meeting of 10 people and getting everyone to sort of take one action that day, turn off light switches and stuff. I think that can have a far bigger tangible effect than, for example, Robert writing an all staff email to people about it. You already have that trust with those people, and that they'll listen, essentially. Don't exaggerate. Sarah talked about greenwashing. I think colleagues and everyone are sort of quite wise to that now, and we'll see if things don't quite seem to work out, don't quite seem to be true. I think colleagues know that recycling their paper isn't going to save the planet on its own, so let's not pretend that it will. We've got to sort of be realistic and say, these are small actions that add up, and they're worth it for that reason. So instead of don't exaggerate, do be objective and honest. We can use facts, as I say, stats are always really helpful. Acknowledge the fact that there's always more we can do, and just be transparent and upfront about that. Again, similarly, don't be too boastful or demanding. This is probably more when communicating with the public, but I think at Reading we can be proud and we can be bold in our action. But obviously, if we come across like we think we're it because we do this, or like we think everyone should do what we're doing, I think people will switch off and not be engaged. So being humble, sympathetic and realistic about what we're asking of people and what we do, and the fact we can do more will get us listened to. And my last do, a sort of an action for everyone really, is if you're doing actions in your offices and your teams, please do report them. I think it's really important and sometimes forgotten that when we're asking people to fill in a survey or do an action or whatever, I think it's really important to report back the impact that had. People are far more likely to listen and do it again if they can see that what they did actually achieved something, and it sort of motivates them to carry on and see, again, builds that trust in us as the messengers. So please do share your stories with us in staff comms. We're always happy to share them, and we can do them as good case studies to inspire others.
From a social media perspective, we think a lot about the so what and the why we want to put a message out. So it's really worth thinking about what it is you want to say, and really why you think it's interesting and why it should be interesting to your audience. We make fun of our boss quite a lot because he's always talking about with videos this kind of the narrative arc, which sounds very grand, but it's a good point. It's kind of if you're making a video, what is the story and how are you going to tell it in a compelling way? Also, we find a lot on social media that we get a lot of negative comments, mainly from people telling us that climate change isn't a thing. So be prepared for negativity if you are posting on large channels. Try not to argue back. It's not always possible, but as long as you've kind of got facts and you've got research, you can back up your claims or your point, then you should be fine. And then in terms of actual practical tips for social media, if you're trying to grow an audience, remember to engage with other accounts, get into the habit of liking and commenting on other people's posts that you find interesting and kind of relate to your overall brand or messaging. Hopefully they'll engage with you back. So that's the kind of point of that. Also, you don't need to be on every single channel. And it's a bit rich because we've got about 9, but it's really good to, if you're more comfortable with Instagram and more of your people are there, then do that one channel really well rather than doing 4 channels kind of in a kind of mediocre way and not getting engagement on any of them. And also, I think Pete mentioned about images and videos. Just make sure that you're using best practice for whatever channel you're posting on. So make sure the image size is correct for that channel. Things don't crop in a weird way. Also for like Instagram, images with text on them tend to not do as well as images of people or campus or wildlife, all that kind of thing. And also remember to utilize Instagram stories and Facebook stories as well, because they get really high engagement and people can actually do something with those posts. They can click through on links on them. So that's also really important to kind of tie that into your strategy if you have one.
Yeah, interesting. I'll just go quickly to the other questions just because of our time. And the 5th question is, are there any communication tools or resources that you find particularly useful for sustainability messaging?
Yeah, so coming back to the sort of stats example that I gave, obviously we can't sort of conjure those up from our heads, so we have some sort of go-to places that we'll go to find these stats that can back up what we're saying. I think the annual sustainability report is amazing for this actually, and I'm going to put a link in the chat. I think so much of it. Pretty much whenever we're doing reports or stories, there's always a stat in here to back up what you're saying, and there's tons of good stuff the university's done that we perhaps don't even realise. So that's my probably number 1 resource I'd recommend. The sustainability website itself, I think, is brilliant as well. Similarly, it sort of summarises things we're doing in all different areas. So those 2 places are great for finding evidence. And I think for everyone sort of on the call, if we're doing sort of more informal comms or comms within our teams, please do feel free to use the all staff channels or the news website as well for the public sort of news stories. Obviously, all those stories that are revolving around a sustainability achievement or an ask that we're making of staff, all those are already written, by us in a way that's meant to be sympathetic and engaging and getting the point across up front. So please do borrow from those messages, and if that makes life easier, then repeat those by all means. I think they're good resources. And lastly, I was going to mention the university strategy. We try and gear we try and link a lot of what we say to that, because obviously pretty much everything we all do is supporting one of those 4 principles in the strategy. So that's accessible from the main university website homepage, and you can find the sort of why aspect of what you're putting across. What do we want people to do? This will give you the why, what we're trying to achieve as a university, which will help.
From a social media point of view, we tend to use the actual university news channel a lot. That's where we get most of our stories from, but also just keeping our eyes and ears open for other stories in the world. So whatever newspapers you read or other social media channels you follow, if there's something that's kind of comes up that sounds interesting, that we have something that we can relate to, that's often where we get jumping off point from in our work as well.
Thank you so much. I'll just go to the next question so we have enough time for questions and answers. And that's the last question. And it's, do you have any final thoughts or advice for our sustainability champions on how to effectively communicate sustainability initiatives?
I think from my point of view, I think it goes without saying that everyone here is probably quite passionate about climate action and sustainability. So my advice would be to just try and let that enthusiasm come through. If you're passionate about it, then you'll tend to write more passionately about these things. So yeah, just let that engagement, enthusiasm and interest kind of come through in your messaging.
Yeah, I'd echo that as well. I think the main point I wanted to make today, because obviously we all do comms in various different ways, and it's not the same as the way me and Sarah do it. I think everyone on this call as a champion, and everyone not on the call is a champion, has a massively powerful role to play. And I really do think this face-to-face communication, the really informal, casual communication that we have with the people we sit near, is probably the most powerful tool we've got to get these messages out there. So as I say, please do feel free to share those kind of core messages or things that you see on the staff portal. I think that is kind of up to us to try and get people to listen to and get people to act on. And as I said earlier in the meeting, I don't think we should assume that everyone sees this stuff otherwise. Like a lot of people working at Reading, they appreciate this is a big thing, and I'm sure they absorb some of it, but some people probably blank it out and get on with their day job. So we shouldn't assume that people are probably reading all these newsletters and all these stories and really sort of engaging. We may be their best and maybe only source of that information. So a conversation in the kitchen with a colleague might be the one thing they see that month about what we're expected to do to try and save energy and sort of save the planet and everything. So yeah, the main message I wanted to get across was really appreciate how powerful you are and the role you can play. As a practical tip, we've tried to do this in our sort of little meetings we have in our teams, try and sort of target maybe one thing, one small change. I think being realistic and trying to achieve that rather than sort of trying to do everything all at once can be quite a good way of focusing attention on something, actually getting people to do it. And then, as I say, being able to show them the results of that, because you've changed one little thing, it's quite easy to show them what the benefit of that was. And then they think, oh, that's great. What's next? As an example, Julia, who's on this call in our Corp Comms meeting about a year ago, I think, did a quick sort of talk in our team meeting about doing you or our bit. And that's just all about individual actions. She spoke about why it existed, the things you were meant to do. I think by the end of that meeting, already everyone in the meeting was signed up. There were chat messages going off about a bit of friendly competition and what people were going to earn points for.
Just to say thank you, Pete. But Sarah also worked with me on that. To give her credit.
Sarah and Julia.
I was also going to say it wasn't all that friendly, to be honest. We got very competitive.
Fierce competition.
There was a lot of competition for my homemade trophy hat.
Yes,
with recyclable
exactly.
materials.
A green prize. So I mean, the fact that we still remember that quite vividly all these months later, I think shows that certainly beyond any staff portal article I can remember, that's the thing that sticks in my head, that face-to-face one simple action. And I think Sarah and Julia really achieved that through speaking in the meeting. And then the very last point I wanted to make was do get in touch with us if you want any advice, whatever kind of comms it is. We're here to help, and hopefully as a team we can make a bit of a difference.
Thank you so much, Pete and Sarah. I've really learned a lot today, and I'm taking home that images are key as part of driving our messages, and we should also try to use the right medium, or to reach out to the people we want to reach out to. And one very important thing I also learned is that social media is very key when we're trying to, pass across messages. And we should also make sure we like and comment on other people's posts. So we could also get people to, like and comment. Very great insights from Pete and Sarah. Also, I just wanted to say thank you for your support to our Future First, the case studies, the newsletters, and the staff portal, and everything all the champions are doing just to make sure that sustainability, is widely spread across the university. At this moment, we will want to, take questions, and Pete and Sarah will be answering, and any other person that wants to contribute. So please, if you've got any question, it's time for questions now. Thank you.
If no one else is going to ask you a question, I will. So we have all these wonderful channels out there. How best is it to approach you guys with stories and kind of information? Yeah, is it throw it all on Teams, drop you an email? How do you prefer, and what kind of there's so many different formats. I could do Dropbox, all those sorts of things. What fits with you guys, kind of?
Yeah, sure. We've neglected that form of communication, haven't we? Speaking to us. So we have for internal comms the email address communications@reading.ac.uk. That's a good place for any kind of staff or student messages, really, to ask for advice about using our central channels or advice for doing your own kind of thing. Obviously, myself and Hayley Haggins, who's my co-worker in staff communications, you can drop us a team message anytime. As I say, it's not all about the sort of formal routes. Just have a chat with us, and that's as we've sort of covered for half an hour. That's the best way to ask for something or make a request, really. So yeah, just don't be a stranger. We're here, and we can help and hopefully talk things through.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, I've just put in the chat the social media inbox address. So if you've got any stories or my address, just send them over, as Pete says.
Yeah. During the one-to-ones that we had with champions, we kind of encourage champions to, reach out to you guys if they've got their, case studies or, any action they want to preach or spread across the university. And yeah, a lot of champions came back to me and like, oh, how can I get hold of these guys? And yeah, I sent them Hallie's email address, and I pointed them up to Pete and Hallie. So yep, that's one very important thing that we want to really utilize in our Future First. The case studies are very important to kind of preach sustainability across the university, and we are really keen to see champions, taking up that project. I don't know if there are any other questions. While we're waiting for other questions, I just wanted to state that we'll be having the quarterly network meeting in July. It's supposed to be on the 9th, but I'm considering, I know Luke is just hearing this for the first time, but I'm considering we'll have it July 11th. And in the quarterly network meeting, it's going to be an update meeting. That's the last quarterly network meeting for the academic section, and we felt it's wise for us to talk to champions about what we've been doing with our Future First, what we've achieved, and we've got some great news to share with you. We'll just keep that quiet until on the 11th, and so we are hoping that it's going to be a face-to-face meeting, but I'm not entirely sure if we want to make it an hybrid meeting, but at the moment, we would love to see our champions, because that's a kind of is an opportunity for us to engage with other champions, talk to colleagues about what's on your mind. And yeah, I know we could do that via Teams, but like Pete said, face to face communication is very key. Look, you want to say something? You look surprised.
No, not at all. Whenever we hold it, what we'll do is obviously try and get early communications out of where and when. We'll try and make it hybrid. All the great points there. But I think what I think we should do is, it's the end of the academic year. Let's get some tea, coffee, and cake going. Always going to get us a few more people with that offer. So yeah, that was all that's my only comment. But with regards to that, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I'll just hand over the section to Luke. So Luke, I'm sorry, just before you take over, Luke. Pete and Sarah, thank you so much. I reached out to Sarah really late, but here she is helping us out. Thank you for that. Luke, okay.
Well, just to thank you to all our champions for coming. It's always good to see if your icon photo is not your actual face is there. So thank you all for coming. Of course, an update there briefly from Caroline about the quarterly review meeting that's coming in July. We'd also like to see your faces actually in person. And keep up the good kind of work, communications. Obviously, you know all the channels. We've got the Teams channel as well. Feel free to drop us a line. And we are developing kind of next year's program. And there may be some of that in the quarterly review meeting about what do we all want to see developed going forward in the next year. So I might put a question out when we send the invite out, just to start some thoughts before that quarterly review. So that is all from us for this clinic. Thank you all for coming. I will share the channel afterwards. Thank you very much, all.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thank you.